And so, again, this isn't about teaching or one person teaching and or talking at the audience while everyone else is listening. It really is a collaborative effort to learn together in this shared learning space with the all teach, all learn model based off of Project Echo. Because when one business grows together, it strengthens the entire ecosystem that we have here. And so for housekeeping, again, this session is being recorded, so please be mindful of what you choose to share today. But we encourage you to share your knowledge and expertise as it does enhance the conversation. Please mute your mic if you're not speaking to be respectful of others. And if you could keep your camera on, use chat for questions that you may have, and we can address those and be kind and mindful to others. Also, please update your Zoom to show both your name, your first, and then your last name, and then your agency or organization. If you do not know how to do that, you will click on the three dots to the right of your picture, and then you should be able to rename your Zoom. Again, with the model, we'll go through our didactic presentation and then move to a case discussion based on today's case form, and then we'll go ahead and summarize that. So let me stop sharing here, and then we can move to introductions. I'll start by myself. I'm Dominic Baca. I'm a destination sales representative in our convention and tourism department here at the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. And I work alongside Laura Chavez, who is not here today, but she wishes she could be. And then I'll pass it on to our team at the Echo Institute. Roxy, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Dominic. Good morning, everyone. My name is Roxy, and I'm a program manager with Project Echo. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxy. Elliot?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Elliot Padras. I'm a program specialist with Project Echo. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Elliot. Welcome. And I'll move to Mark.
Good morning, Dominic. Thank you. My name is Mark Fidel. I'm one of the subject matter experts for the Chamber's Project Echo, and I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for being here. Greg?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Mullen. I'm the president at ABQIT and one of the members of the Hub team. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Greg. So I'll move based off of how I see the order of my screen. We'll start with Paul Mondragon.
Good morning, all. Paul Mondragon. I'm president of Bank of America, New Mexico. I'm a current board member and past board chair of the Hispano Chamber.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining today. Sonia Armijo.
Hi, my name is Sonia Armijo. I'm with the PC Place, your one-stop computer shop here in Albuquerque.
Welcome, Sonia. It's nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Tomás Briones. We can't hear you, Tom. I'm not sure. We still can't hear you, Tom. It shows that you're unmuted, but there's no sound coming through.
Tom is with Briones Business Law, and he's the current board member, also past board chair of the Hispano Chamber. Got you, bro.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for being here. We'll move to Edgar Zapata.
Hi, my name is Edgar, and I'm the data operations analyst here at Newspace Nexus.
Welcome, Edgar. Thank you for being here. And is there anybody that I missed that I might not see on my screen? I think we got everybody. Please speak up if I did skip your introduction. But I think we can move to today's didactic presentation. today it's very exciting. We're going to be talking about AI and probable privacy implications for business, presented by Mr. Mark Fidel with Fidel Consulting Group. And so I'll pass it over to Mark. And you're sharing your screen. There you are.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dominic. And I'm going to go off video myself just because of the bandwidth of where I'm at. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today. We're running into AI more and more, sometimes with our knowledge, sometimes without our knowledge. When we get to the case study, it's actually from a number of years back, but we'll discuss that when in a deal where Meta was using AI recognition for facial recognition purposes, and there was a privacy issue, but we'll cover that later. Today's conversation, if you're using AI in your business, understand where the data is going, what's happening with it, and what you can do to make sure that you're not going to unintentionally disclose somebody's, either yours, your employees, or your clients' confidential private information into an AI system. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about AI privacy connection first, why AI changes everything, what the current regulatory landscape looks like, and why it's probably behind the curve. Some high-risk use cases where privacy issues emerge. Going to give you a risk assessment framework that you can use in your small business, in your organization, to help assess where you are in terms of managing privacy versus the utility of AI systems. And then some action steps that I can leave you with for today. And Greg, I'll call you out right now that if there's something you need to weigh in on, just given your technical and experiential expertise, please do so. I always appreciate the conversations we get into on these Echo presentations.
Sounds good, Mark.
Thank you. So AI transforms how data is used, not just where it's stored. And because we may be so enamored with what it's doing with the data, we may not realize where that data ends up. Training data persistence is something that you'll hear, and your data may train models and influence future outputs. So, for example, right now I'm in Taos for the CNM Ingenuity's ski lift pitch challenge, where there are a number of startup organizations that are competing for a cash award, and they give their pitches on the chairlift riding up the mountain to judges. Reason I bring this up to serve in context is one of the competitors is a company that's building AI training models for mental health therapists. And so it's not to do the mental health therapy itself, it's to train therapists using an AI system, essentially. They seem to be pretty successful at it. They tell a good story. And every training that a therapist goes through, right, that information then leads to a richer environment of information for subsequent trainings, okay? And so if you're using an AI model that is in open source, and Greg, I'm going to ask you to talk about briefly the differences between just asking ChatGPT a general question and establishing your own sandbox within ChatGPT. But if you're just using the public source, the open source ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, right, the data you're putting in there is going to be used to train those models, and then somebody else could have access to them intentionally or unintentionally. There's something called inference and re-identification. AI can derive sensitive information from seemingly harmless data, making connections that aren't obvious, and then being able to pull that information. Third-party processing. Data can leave your infrastructure for cloud AI services. And the reason we're concerned about this is because the compute power necessary to run these models is by and large such that these are in large data centers, where the computational effort is happening versus in your own data environment versus in your own server room or on your own laptop. Now, certainly there are some AI engines that run just fine on a laptop, right? But they're very specifically designed to be able to not exceed the capabilities of the machine itself, while still giving a reasonable output. Greg, is that an appropriate way to say that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I appreciate that. On the training data persistence, Greg, do you mind delving in real quick into that division between the public, the open source aspect, and then more the private aspects of ChatGPT and other models, I'm assuming?
Right. So there are open source models out there, and what they mean by open source is that you can actually download and review all the code. It's open, and you can run the models on your own hardware. So these
Yeah.
models are software models, but they need to run on hardware. When we talk about open source models, and some of the most popular ones are Chinese open source models, but OpenAI has open source models. When you're downloading those and running them on your own hardware, you can really control where your data is going because it doesn't need to leave your hardware, your ecosystem. But when you're using models on the web, say the chat interface models, like when you just go to ChatGPT and you start chatting with it and asking questions about it, you're not using the open source models, you're using OpenAI's model, and you're using their hardware, their data center infrastructure. And they'll tell you, and you can even ask the AI to help you research this, how they use that data. And typically, for all those sort of chat interface models, they're going to be using that data to train their next model. So, all the conversations that you're having with it, they'll even sometimes ask for your feedback on specific chats. And then they're going to use those conversations to train the next version of the model. And so what you want to be careful of is putting information in those chats that you might not want the next model to necessarily train on. There's a lot to this. And as a matter of fact, even within Microsoft, they have Copilot now. And some of the default settings are that Copilot can train off of your documents, your Excel files, your Word files, that kind of stuff. And so there are some configurations that need to change within your Microsoft environment where you can go in and you can say, don't train off of my personal documents or my business documents. So there really is a lot to that. The AI companies are desperate for more data. They've used the entire internet to train these models, and it's not enough. They need more. Now they're making synthetic data, which is just the models writing stuff that's going to train other models. But they want more and more and more data. And so they default the settings to allow the models to be able to train off of your data. There are some configurations you can change to limit that. But one way to limit that, again, is using an open source model that you've corralled on your hardware, and it can't call out, it can't send your data anywhere else. So those are just some considerations.
Thank you, Greg. And as a side note, Greg is very much a go-to source for being able to do what he just suggested. Being able to bring an open source model down into your own environment so that the data you're using in it is not shared publicly, essentially. Finally, lack of transparency. Black box models make it hard to audit data usage. Imagine trying to understand and follow the path of where some inadvertently released data has ended up. If you've, for example, the acting head of the federal agency, CISA, last July, used ChatGPT on their servers and uploaded information that wasn't classified, but certainly was sensitive into that model. And that became part of the larger set of data that ChatGPT has access to. Current regulatory landscape, really Europe and California are the leaders in privacy, I think, in a global perspective. The GDPR is the General Data Protection rules or rights, and it covers the EU, and it deals with consent, data minimization, and right to explanation of what's happening with your data. Okay, and if you've noticed when you've gone to a website for an entity that may have uh, global reach, which a lot of entities today do, right? There's a pop-up that talks about cookie usage and data usage before it'll let you proceed into that website. And that is largely because of GDPR. Because of any of that, if any of that interaction touches systems that are within the European borders, the EU borders, then GDPR takes effect. The CCPA and CPRA are California's regulations surrounding data usage, data rights, and privacy, very much focused on the consumer. There's and automated decision-making disclosures. And so those are some strong ones. And so if you're dealing with California on any level, for example, you have a website and you're using a web hosting service that happens to be based out of California, or you're using a SaaS provider and they're based in California, then certain California laws are probably going to take effect. The European Union has come out with their AI Act, and it's a risk-based framework, high-risk AI system requirements. And again, it's an effort to put guardrails around what's going on with AI systems today. Not sure it's a losing battle quite yet, but it's at least an effort it's a move in the right direction for helping to at least give an understanding as to, hey, your data may not be secure nor private if you use these systems. And then there's a variety of state laws. Virginia, Colorado, and Connecticut are modeling their privacy laws to the California law. There's another state, New York State, for financial services that has a very strong data privacy protection element to it. And Paul, I would imagine that Bank of America has run into the New York laws surrounding data privacy. Is that something you can comment on at all?
I would just tend to agree. I don't know
Yeah, okay.
specifically, but
Yeah.
obviously we're across the nation and
Yeah.
have to deal with a number of data privacy laws.
Another, yeah. And I'm glad that we have you representing a national organization, right, of great reach. But then, gosh, your regulatory and compliance people must be just very busy in keeping track of things.
Yeah, I'll add in real quick. I mean, with all of this, so Bank of America recently added Copilot, and
Okay.
so we're getting extensive training on what not
Good.
to do.
What
I
not to
mean,
do, right?
we recognize there's a firewall, between
Yeah.
what happens internally and what's out there, but it's like only use Copilot for these things. Never take anything offsite. Never go
Right.
through Chat GPT with data.
Yep.
You can use Copilot and do certain things. I've been proceeding slowly, cautiously,
Good.
and just general questions on things. I'm expected to dive in more deeply. At least I'm one of the folks that has taken the wrapper off. There are a number of folks that haven't. They're a little afraid.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And as Greg indicated earlier, right, the default settings for a lot of these systems are to share data, right? Just like in social media, right? The default settings, if you sign up for Facebook, LinkedIn, right? The default settings are pretty broad in terms of where the reach is because they make their money on the connections that people make, right? The more connections that are made, the more data that they can sell to advertisers. So, all right, let's talk about some high-risk privacy use cases. Customer data processing. common AI applications are AI chatbots for customer service. So on the left side are the common AI applications. On the right side are going to be the associated privacy risks. So for AI chatbots for customer service, well, personally identifiable information, PII, can be exposed to third-party AI vendors in those conversations that are happening. Something called sentiment analysis on support tickets. Customer conversations can be used for training, right? Predictive analytics for churn. Sensitive data can be inferred from patterns of those analytics. Again, on the left side, something that's why you're using the tool. On the right side, here's the implications if things aren't appropriately managed and configured. So automated email responses, there can be inadequate consent mechanisms, customer segmentation and profiling, data retention beyond original purpose, right? Again, where is that data being held? Who has control over it? When does it actually go away when necessary? If your organization has a data retention policy in place that says we keep this type of data for this many years, and you're not considering data that may be in AI systems that you've used, you need to consider those essentially. Employee monitoring for productivity. Paul, any employee monitoring for productivity going on in Bank of America?
God, I hope not.
Yeah. And yet we know there is.
Yeah.
We know there is, right? Most large organizations do that. This call may be recorded for training and quality purposes, right? I wish they'd just say this call is being recorded. We're using it for training. We're using it for productivity. And by the way, yes, it is discoverable in a lawsuit. At any rate, common AI applications are AI-powered time tracking and monitoring. Well, has the employee given consent for those requirements? And that's a balancing act as to employee consent. But some of this is their data. Email communication analysis. Some of the privacy and legal risks are biometric data collection, keystroke and mouse usage, right? It can be used to infer lack of productivity. And there's software programs that were developed quite a bit during COVID, because everybody's working remotely, and for entities that tracked usage based on interaction with the computer, right? There's software applications that would move the mouse every so often, that would move the track bar, right? Things like that to indicate that there is activity on this end. Productivity scoring algorithms. Well, you might get into a protected class discrimination issue there. Resume screening and hiring tools. There could be a psychological impact of surveillance, right? And performance prediction models, dealing with union consultation or works council in the EU. Certainly, does performance prediction models in a union environment, does that violate the collective bargaining agreement with that particular union? It may very well. So these are all things that have to be understood before implementing, especially if you are in a union environment. Marketing automation, personalization. Common AI applications are behavioral targeting and tracking. And again, privacy risks or third-party data sharing. Where is that information going? Lookalike audience generation. Privacy risks or inadequate cookie consent. Dynamic content personalization. In other words, hyper-focused on presenting content that is specific to the user. Well, then that gets into, are you actually tracking me across multiple devices and providing essentially fingerprints for my persona so that I'm developing ads? Now, how many of us have had the scenario where you've been talking about something and lo and behold, ads pop up about something you've been talking about, right? Not searching for, but talking about. Well, for both the quote unquote AI that Apple has and Google and other tools, right? They have to be listening in order to hear key phrases for them to respond. That means they're listening all the time, quite honestly. Okay. So predictive lead scoring, you can get into sensitive category inferences, and then automated A/B testing and optimization and marketing automation. Well, where is that data going ultimately? All right. So just things to be aware of, right? And their associated privacy risks. Here's a framework we're going to talk about here. First of all, 4 dimensions of AI privacy risk: data sensitivity, data control, transparency and consent, and regulatory applicability. So data sensitivity, what type of data is being processed? Is it PII, health data, financial data, biometric data, and location data? So these are, if you're doing these, then there's a scoring based on this, and I'll get to the scoring in a minute. Data control, who has access, where does it go? Is it on premise in systems that are in your care, custody, control, or is it in a cloud environment where just the data is yours, but the machinery it belongs to the vendor? Does the vendor have access? Are there sub-processors? Is the data being used for training or other purposes? Okay. Transparency and consent. Do the subjects know and agree? Are there clear disclosures? Are there opt-in mechanisms? And do you get a right to explanation, such as the EU has mandated? And then regulatory applicability, which laws apply? It could be that a lot of laws apply depending on the organization, right? GDPR, CCPA, that's California, HIPAA, FERPA, AI Act, right? There's a variety of laws that deal with data privacy. So here's the scoring. Essentially, it's low, medium, and high risk. And if, for example, your data sensitivity, it's low risk if you're using non-sensitive business data. It's medium risk if it's contact information and behavioral data. And it's high risk if it's health, financial, or biometric data. All right. And you can read the rest of them on your own. But essentially, if your total score across in this grid ends up being from 4 to 6, then it's a low risk environment from a privacy perspective. 7 to 9, medium risk; 10 to 12, a high risk. Okay. AI chatbot, for example. So implementing a customer service chatbot. Data sensitivity is a medium. So we get customer names, emails, and support queries, medium PII. Data control, well, it's going to be high risk because it's cloud-based and vendor uses the model for improvement for subsequent interactions with you and other customers. Transparency, notices displayed but buried in the terms of service that none of us read, right? And regulatory, in this particular instance, there are EU customers, so GDPR takes effect, and California customers, CCPA. And so, interestingly enough, as I said, one thing I said earlier, and let me clarify, right? Not only if your providers are in California, but if you have customers in California, right, then CCPA. If you have European customers, then GDPR takes effect. So this scenario, I get a total score of 10, which is a high risk environment from a privacy perspective with this particular chatbot. Okay. So this week, what to do starting today: inventory your AI tools, list all AI systems currently in use, whether they're software as a service tools, plugins, integrations, right? You can apply the risk framework that we covered in the last 2 slides, score each AI system using the 4-dimension framework. Do that in the next 2 weeks. Review your vendor agreements, right? Or have your attorney review those vendor agreements. Examine data processing terms, especially data training clauses. And if you don't have an attorney, we have one on the call today. We update your privacy policies, disclose AI usage, data processing, third-party sharing. That can be done over the next month. Implement consent mechanisms, add clear opt-in for high-risk AI applications. Now, it may be that an application simply is going to be high risk because of the nature of what it does, but then you have to wrap the guardrails around it of opt-in, and it has to be clear to the user what's happening with their data. And then establish governance, create an approval process for new AI tool adoption, right? I'm sure the larger organizations, Paul, I'll pick on you again, Bank of America, right, have a governance process either already in force or certainly being developed and being modified as we speak for new AI tool adoptions. Financial industries, healthcare tend to be the early adopters in new technologies. But they're also some of the most regulated industries out there, right? Banking is very heavily regulated. Health, hospitals, right? Caregivers in terms of doctors, clinics, et cetera, very highly regulated, largely under HIPAA, but not exclusively under HIPAA. So here's some immediate action steps to be able to follow. So AI fundamentally changes privacy risk. It's not just about where the data is, it's about what's happening to that data as well. Your landscape, understand what regulation geographically you're playing in, right? So that you understand what are the implications for your entity in terms of regulatory landscape. Paul, I'll use Bank of America again, right? You have customers who live in Europe. I know that, right? Bank of America, even though as Bank of America, you have to follow GDPR because of that. Okay. So it's a complex landscape. It always changes, right? And so erring on the side of compliance is better than asking for the asking for the forgiveness later. Customer data, employee monitoring, and marketing are the highest risk areas, pure and simple today in business. Use that four-dimension framework to systematically assess every AI system that you have. High scores require formal assessments and extensive safeguards, okay? And privacy is not optional. It's a legal requirement and a competitive advantage, pure and simple. You're going to get a copy of these slides, if I'm not mistaken, Dominic. These will be shared. These are the privacy regulations with the URLs to go after, the various assessment tools that are available on the web. And then there's vendor evaluation, how to evaluate vendors that are coming to you. Data processing agreement templates, AI vendor security questionnaires, privacy shield, and standard contractual clauses. Reach out to me for risk assessment templates and a vendor questionnaire. I have some that are available, and I can share them with you outside of this environment. That's me, and you'll get this information in the slide. Okay, any questions that I can address right now?
Are there any questions for Mark?
I have a question. So I've been using ChatGPT for about 3 years now and kind of using it to, put together like presentations or outlines for speeches and information, but also to outline a couple books. So now that I'm glad I attended this because now I've got to go back because some of that content is my personal content that I need to go and remove or do something about that, correct?
So that's a great question. Greg, I'm going to ask you for a second here. What does removal look like from a ChatGPT environment? Is that possible today?
Well, you do have your history of chats on the left-hand side. And you can go delete chats out of there depending on how old they are, it may be too late. You can go to the settings and under settings and data controls, you can toggle off the train off of my conversations, and then new chats going forward won't be saved or used. And then also, if you're using certain business offerings from OpenAI, like if you're on ChatGPT Team or Enterprise, those explicitly default to opt out. And then for those older conversations, yeah, you can go in and delete those, but depending on how old they are, it might be too late. But that doesn't mean that like next versions of ChatGPT would have information about you, Valerie Martinez, if some random person were to ask, and it wouldn't just surface those. The way that it's used and the way that training data is used is going to depersonalize you in its training data. It's not going to have this specific information about you. So it's a little bit less of a risk than what you're thinking. It's not going to have that personal data. It's going to use it to train the next model in terms of the conversations that you had and the way you talk and the probabilities of how your words are organized. But yeah, it's not going to just surface personal information and conversations that you've had on future versions. But it does mean that yes, OpenAI has those conversations. It's saved in their data centers, and they can do stuff with it. I don't think your risks are very high of that information
Agreed.
leaking out.
Agreed. Yeah.
Okay. Good
Does
to
that
know.
help, Valerie?
It helps. I've been using ChatGPT
Okay.
since version 1.0, and now I'm at 5.2. So I better work on that.
It's pretty awesome, though.
Yeah, and
I agree. It's
OpenAI is
pretty
making
awesome.
this product, for consumers. They are very targeted on kind of the consumer market, and they know that, people are having all kinds of discussions with OpenAI. As a matter of fact, they're about to release an entire health part where they're going to be treating the conversation data differently if you opt in to have, for example, healthcare conversations with your AI. And so they are making efforts to try to get people to trust that you can have personal conversations with the AI without your data being at risk, right? So that is happening as well.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Briones?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
On Valerie's point, what I understand some people with not good intentions are doing, if they're targeting you in your business and they know something about you, they can put in inquiries into like ChatGPT that would be pointed in your direction that if you have ChatGPT, they may be able to figure out things about your particular company or private information that they wouldn't learn otherwise because you put it into your ChatGPT. It takes some knowledge on their part, but if they if they know your company's in a niche market, they may
Right.
be able to target your company and you don't even know it.
One of the fun parts about this, though, Tom, and I say that tongue in cheek, is that there's so much information anyway, right? That's out there. It's a matter of then how do you distinguish if you're the bad guy, right? And you're using ChatGPT for these purposes. Really, I'm not sure it's apparent that you will be able to determine what's already publicly available versus the source being because your target has put information into ChatGPT inadvertently. And I'm not sure it matters at that point, quite honestly, right? I think there's areas of the law that have to really catch up in this regard in terms of, gosh, is that a privacy violation because I found the information in an open source product? That's it may be, all right, what are you going to be using this information for ultimately if there's a cause of action to follow? But the idea is again, be careful, right? I think Tom, if I may paraphrase for you, be cautious, right? And be intentional about the usage.
Well, for example, I figured out that Paul Munder don't like soccer.
Nobody knew that until you just
Nobody
said
knew
that.
that.
Nobody.
I just blew your cover, Paul.
It's a mystery. Yeah.
It is. It is. All right. Thank you, Tom. Louis, did you have your hand raised earlier? And if not, no big deal.
Not.
Okay, no problem. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Dominic, you want to move on to the time-wise? Are we okay moving on to the case study?
Of course. So we can move on
great.
to sharing our case presentation today. Thank you, Mark, for that and these wonderful questions. I think they're all alluding to wonderful points as we move through how this is affecting small businesses. Again, we always invite our participants to share real technology challenges that they've faced or scenarios that they've seen in their business, as we have alluded to today during a future session. And so you can briefly present that scenario at any future sessions. Please take a look at our upcoming topics on our iEcho page. And if you'd like to submit a case, we encourage you to do so. Just click the link in the chat that's in the chat now and download and complete the case form and email it to us. If you have any questions, you can reach us at hispanochamberecho@gmail.com. And so I'll go ahead and share my screen here quickly. This is the case presentation form. And thank you for sharing this with us, Mark. And I'll go ahead and pass it on to Mark to talk about his case today.
If you think AI has been is relatively new, it may be from the consumer point of view, but it's been in use. Various aspects of AI has been used for decades. All right. The particular case is a privacy violation. The company in question is Meta, formerly Facebook Inc. Right, and the violation was unauthorized collection and use of biometric data. Facial geometry without consent. The settlement amount is 1.4 billion with the B paid to Texas over 5 years because the state of Texas filed suit. And it was the law that was violated was the Texas Capture or Use of Biometric Identifier Act, also called QB. So Capture or Use of Biometric Identifier Act. And the Texas Deceptive Trade Practices Consumer Protection Act. The period of time was over a decade of violations from 2011 to 2021. In 2011, Facebook rolled out a feature called Tag Suggestions, which from the consumer point of view, the end user point of view, was marketed as a convenience tool to make it easier for users to tag friends in photos. Okay, if any of you are Facebook users and use this, this is what happened. Behind the scenes, this feature is powered by a software application called DeepFace, which at the time was one of the most advanced facial recognition AI systems ever created. It was a deep learning neural network with over 120 million connection weights, which is pretty extensive at the time. And it was trained on approximately 4 million images uploaded by Facebook users. Ultimately achieved a 97.35% accuracy in facial recognition, matching or exceeding human level performance, making it more accurate than even FBI facial recognition technology at the time. So what did Meta do wrong? Well, Meta violations were extensive and systematic. Automatic opt-in without explanation. Meta automatically turned on tag suggestions for all Texas users without explaining how the feature worked or what data was being collected. Now, you're going to see Texas users in throughout here. The likelihood is that it wasn't limited to Texas, but it was Texas which brought the suit. All right. Undisclosed facial scanning. For over a decade, Meta ran facial recognition software on virtually every face and every photograph uploaded to Facebook, capturing detailed records of facial geometry. Processing of non-users. The system didn't just scan Facebook users, it analyzed the faces of people who appeared in photos but had never created Facebook accounts or consented to any data processing. Training data without consent. Meta used the biometric data extracted from user photos to train and improve its deep face AI models, essentially turning every uploaded photo into training data for commercial AI development, and no legal consent whatsoever. The Texas law, which was passed in 2009, explicitly requires companies to inform individuals and obtain consent before capturing biometric identifiers. Meta did neither. Millions of Texans were affected. Billions of scans were involved. It was over a decade long of violations and permanent biometric data. Unlike passwords or credit cards, facial geometry is immutable. Once compromised, it cannot be changed. It's tough. It's difficult to change your facial recognition, right? To change your facial structure without extensive surgical changes. This case represents one of the most significant privacy violations in AI history to date. It was a knowing violation because the Texas law was enacted 2 years before Meta launched the tag suggestions feature. Meta knew the law, or should have known the law existed, and chose to violate it anyway. Meta marketed the feature so deceptive most sophisticated facial recognition databases. Yes, question?
You did cut off just a moment, Mark. If you could restate your last sentence, I apologize.
Sorry, let me drop my video. That's all right. No problem. There we go. And try again. All right, got it. So knowing violation, right? The law was in effect before Meta launched the software. Deceptive marketing. They did not tell the users what their data was going to be used for. Commercial exploitation, the collected biometric data wasn't just used for tagging, it was used to train another piece of software. And persistence after awareness, even after settling a $650 million class action in Illinois in 2021 for similar violations, Meta only shut down the system later that year, continuing to profit from the violation as long as possible. So what actions were taken to resolve the issue? Well, legal action by the Texas Attorney General at the time and now currently still Ken Paxton. He filed a suit against Meta in State District Court in Harrison County, Texas. And the lawsuit alleged violations of the two laws that we covered earlier. Lawsuit was scheduled for jury trial in June of 2024. On the eve of trial, the parties reached a settlement to avoid the unpredictable outcome of a jury verdict, which could have resulted in larger damages. So, interesting point here for those of you who follow consumer protection lawsuits. Meta decided to settle for $1.4 billion versus facing the outcome of a jury determination of something worse. That's exactly that. That's what I'm gathering from this. Okay. It'll be paid to Texas over 5 years, $500 million in 2024 and $225 million from 2025 to 2028. This was the largest single state settlement ever, exceeds the previous record of a $390 million settlement obtained by 40 states against Google. It was the first enforcement of the QB law in Texas. And as part of the settlement, Meta can seek pre-approval from the Texas AG for future biometric projects to avoid violations. Also, I would think that this case, right, represents a guidebook for other states, because I know that the Meta feature was not limited to Texas citizens. Meta shut down face recognition system in November of 21. It deleted over 1 billion face templates, and it retained the deep face algorithm. It retained the underlying AI model itself, stating it would explore future uses that maintain privacy, control, and transparency. This, of course, raises concerns that Meta could re-implement facial recognition in new products, such as its now failed Metaverse platform. Limitations of the resolution with this, it had significant gaps. First, there was no admission of wrongdoing. There was no destruction of the AI models. There was no individual compensation. The $1.4 billion went to the state of Texas general fund, and affected individuals received no direct compensation, probably because it's hard to prove what damages an individual would have received or would have incurred as a result of this. Limited future prevention. Meta can still deploy facial recognition in other products with pre-approval rather than being banned from biometric collection from the outset. Here's some questions that I'd like to ask, though. Is anybody here knowingly using any AI tools that process photos, videos, or voice recordings of customers or employees? And I'll pause to give time for folks to respond. Okay, so you're not knowingly doing that. Good. If you have collected biometric information data, have you obtained explicit informed consent? Can your customers or employees easily understand what data you're collecting or how it's being used? And Paul, I won't pick on you this time, but I'll pick on the financial services in general. There are banks that use your voice for easy identification when you're proving who you are. And it's not Bank of America that I recall, but it is one of your competitors, and maybe Bank of America does this too. But it's using biometric information. And if I recall correctly, there were a couple of layers of permission that I had to give in order for my voice to be used as a way to identify me as the person on the call accessing my accounts. Do you have any insight or input on that area, Paul, from
Yeah,
the financial services?
I was originally shaking my head no, but I mean, off the top of my head though, I guess, for accessing like apps and stuff like that,
Yep.
facial recognition used to be thumbprint. Almost nobody uses a thumbprint anymore, but now it's the facial recognition. And I don't know if, I mean, yeah, so that's at least one. But I'm not sure if we use voice or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Now, if you're using facial recognition or thumbprint on your phone to access your bank app is simply the biometric information that the phone already has, passing the password into the bank application, right? And so, but what you're giving the bank application permission to do is use facial recognition or use biometric recognition to allow it to pass the password in to the bank's application.
Okay.
Right? When I'm using facial recognition with Bank of America's app, because I'm a Bank of America customer, right? I'm not sending facial recognition to Bank of America. What I'm doing is simply allowing the phone to pass my password on by using my facial recognition to do so. All right. Anybody?
And real quick, Mark, just jumping
Please.
back to your first question, the number
Greg.
one one.
Yeah.
We are definitely doing that.
Okay. Can you explain what that, to the extent that you can, want to cover
go
it?
back to the question real quick, if you could scroll
Sure.
up.
Are you using any AI tools that process photos, videos, or voice recordings of customers or employees?
Yes. So
Okay.
we have a voice AI that actually uses the phone, and we can have it do different tasks for us, including calling customers or potential customers, and interact with them on the phone and have a conversation, whether it's gathering data for us or even setting a calendar appointment up, for a meeting with a human. So that's one example. Other examples are, meeting transcriptions to help us write proposals and that kind of stuff.
Got it. Okay. And what permissions do the customers give to be able to let you do that?
So, for example, on the voice AI phone using agent, at the beginning of every conversation, it does that disclaimer like you talked about, this call is being recorded and transcribed. And so there's that disclaimer.
Got it. Okay.
And then, we are using the APIs from services like OpenAI, which don't use the data from those conversations for training. So if you use the enterprise APIs for a lot of these tools, there's different data use policies around the APIs that don't train off of the data or anything like that.
Okay. Got it. Makes sense. Any others have any input on that particular question? Okay, no problem. Let's talk about your vendors. Do you vet any of your AI vendors before adopting their services? In other words, you give them a questionnaire. Do you understand what their privacy and security practices are? I'll say these are more rhetorical questions at this point. If somebody has some input, please weigh in. Have you asked one thing you want to do though, as we run into more and more AI vendors, is asking the training data question, right? Will our data be used to train or improve your AI models? If so, can we have the opportunity to opt out? Okay. And do your vendor contracts include adequate data protection clauses? Are there specific prohibitions against using your data for model training without consent? Okay. The risk framework that I presented in the first presentation, right? It's a great way to really walk through and do the assessment, and it's pretty simple. Greg, I don't think it's too complex, right? It gives kind of gives a rough order of magnitude of what the issues may be for AI systems. Okay, that you're using either in-house or you're using as part of your marketing plan, your customer reach out, et cetera. Okay. financial and business impact. I would review your cyber insurance policies, right? And overall, I would also review your general liability policies and talk to your agents, your insurance broker or your agent about the implications of data protection, data privacy violations, and what kind of coverage there may be within the policies that you own or that you subscribe to, if you will, right? Think about, could any businesses here survive a $1.4 billion penalty? Um, and well, SMBs won't typically face penalties of this magnitude. State AGs can assess on up to $25,000 per violation under the Texas QB, right? There's reputational cost, which it varies with usage, right? And then again, review your cyber liability coverage. Many exclude intentional violations or they don't cover regulatory fines, right? And so have that conversation with your broker about it. I have a pretty extensive background in cyber coverages, and I'm actually very happy to sit on the phone with you and your insurance carrier and be kind of the intermediary when you're talking to them about cyber insurance. Happy to do that, honestly, because it just makes for a better environment for you as the customer there. I won't go extensively through the others, but question?
Are there any final questions for Mark? Mark, thank you so much.
Let's wrap up. That's fine.
All of these questions are something to consider and very serious when you're thinking about how you're utilizing this technology from the standpoints that we've discussed today. And thank you for placing them here in this case form, because I think it allows for some great takeaways. Again, kind of that analysis of what is our risk factors, and then how can we go about mitigating the risk that we're taking when we are utilizing these tools. So thank you for sharing this, Mark.
Absolutely.
Mark's slides
My
will
pleasure.
be on the iEcho homepage for this session. So if you would like those slides, you can get them there or reach out to us at hispanochamberecho@gmail.com. For the sake of everyone's time today and to be respectful of that, we will close out the session. But if you have any questions regarding this case form, please do reach out to myself, Greg, or Mark, and we can definitely walk through some of the resources that we have here. And so to wrap up, I'd like to remind everyone to please do take our feedback survey. This does allow us to continue to build on the curriculum and build curriculum that is relevant to the needs of your business and the challenges that you are facing. There will be a link in the chat momentarily for that post-session survey. Please do take it. It does help us. For next session, we'll be welcoming Greg. That will be on February 17th. And the topic will be Excel at the speed of thought, working with AI inside your spreadsheets. Again, presented by Greg Mullen with ABQIT. We look forward to that. And again, our sessions are held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month. So please mark your calendars for that. For quick access to join, there's a link in the chat for the iEcho homepage. But you will receive the standard message 30 minutes before each session to join once you're a registered participant. Again, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, hispanochamberecho@gmail.com. And we hope to see you at the next session. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah. All right.